Government shutdown now in its third week. Joining us, House Speaker Mike Johnson. Mr. Speaker, thanks for coming on this morning.
Glad to be with you, as always.
It's good to see you. You know, you've done your job. I know you got a lot of opinions and comments and everything else, but this is like really not your problem. I guess it is. It's all our problem. But you sent over a bill to the Senate, and that's where Senate Democrats are not giving it the go-ahead to reopen the government.
It really is as simple as that. I mean, we passed the bill here September 19th. We did the work. We sent it over in bipartisan fashion, by the way. We did have one Democrat who had common sense enough to not shut the government down. We sent the bill over to the Senate, and now they have spiked it 9 times, okay? They've had 9 votes now. 44 Democrats over there voting down the bill, and they're exacting now real pain for real Americans. I mean, the troops are getting paid, thankfully, because President Trump heroically stepped into the fray here, and they found a way to reallocate some funding to make sure that active duty service members got their pay yesterday on schedule. But that's a temporary fix. And all of these other programs and services, I mean, health services for veterans and, you know, nutrition programs for young pregnant women and, you know, all the things that the government does for the American people are suspended right now. Half the civilian workforce is on furlough, and we're in dire straits. And every week of a shutdown, we surrender $15 billion in gross domestic product. I mean, this is real cost for real people. They're playing political games, and it absolutely has to end.
Mr. Speaker, we're going to have Senator Kelly on a little bit later, and I saw him yesterday saying the way that to end this, it can be ended by President Trump, I guess, giving assurances that those subsidies would be extended. I don't know whether that would be enough. I mean, Chuck Schumer, it's a $1.5 trillion wish list of stuff that he's still insisting on. Here's what's worrisome to a lot of people. If something like that were to happen and the president did say, OK, we're going to get a deal, if it's done without any reform of Obamacare, just extending these subsidies, because it's not the Affordable Care Act. It's the unaffordable Care Act. And something needs to be done for reforms. If you just did a clean extension, you might lose some of your people on the House side, and you might need Democrats to get it passed in the House, which would threaten your speakership. So you're between a rock and a hard place at this point.
Well, this is not about me. It's about the American people. Let's make something very clear. Let me predict what Senator Kelly is going to say on the show. He's going to give you a long, impassioned speech about health care and how the subsidies are so important to make sure that people don't die and all of this. Let me tell you something. This is not a health care fight. This is a very simple funding fight. It always was. They have created a red herring. The subsidies don't expire until the end of the year. We were always planning to have the thoughtful debate and deliberation over that in the month of October and November before the subsidies expired. They know that. They grabbed that issue from the end of the year and pulled it back into September to try to pretend like that was the issue. It never was. Now, let me say this about the subsidies. It needs a dramatic amount of reform if indeed they're going to be extended. Because, as you know, there was no income caps. You have very wealthy people getting subsidized for health care. It was a COVID-era patchwork situation that the Democrats did on their own. And by the way, they voted to put the extension, the expiration date on it at the end of 25. They did that themselves. Why? Because they knew it would have been absurd to try to extend it any further. It has driven the cost of health care up dramatically. There's no hide protections in that program. So the point is, that is a very complicated issue. We have 535 members between the House and Senate. This is a deliberative legislative body. It takes a while to find consensus on an issue that complicated. They know that. So they have grabbed onto that. It is a farce. It is a red herring. It is not the issue of today. Today, the issue is to get the government open again so that we don't hurt our economy, hurt our national security, and hurt the American people who depend upon all these services. It's plain and simple. It's as simple as you outlined at the beginning of this interview. And I hope you'll keep bringing these senators back to that simple point.
Well, there need to be things. The expiration of subsidies is one thing, but the increase we've seen in how much it costs to maintain Obamacare is significant. And Kimberly Strassel, this is a week or two ago, the government mandates and insurance subsidies have created a toxic stew of industry consolidation, inflated payments, opacity about the payments, constrained choices, and the steady erosion of better employer-sponsored plans. It's not as simple as it just extending these. Here's the other thing that I might ask the Senator, Speaker Johnson. Both sides, we know what happens in this country. Republicans have fervent beliefs about something. Democrats have fervent beliefs and deeply held beliefs about health care. So in this case, they're saying it's different this time. This is so important that we are allowed to close down the government because it's so important to us, because we want people to have health care. Republicans have issues that are just as important to them, and this opens the possibility of getting the other side through blackmail to do what they want by closing down the government. And it's hypocritical, and anything that sugarcoats it beyond, I don't see how they can look in the camera with a straight face and say anything other than that.
That's exactly right. And they have voted over and over and over on short stopgap funding measures like CRs. In fact, 29 out of 30 times since 2017, Chuck Schumer has voted for CRs. He voted for this exact measure in March of this year, 7 months ago, and gave impassioned speeches about how it was the only thing, the only option, regardless of all of our different preferences and opinions on legislation. Republicans care about health care. We're not just talking about it, we're doing it. In the big, beautiful bill, in the working families tax cut, we reformed Medicaid to make it work better.
But, Speaker Johnson, I mean, the president and Republicans have said we're repeal and replace, and it's like we're in a wilderness. Republicans are in the wilderness on what to do to try to fix our health care.
Actually, we're not. We're not. We've got pages and pages and pages of ideas on how to reform healthcare. You can't rip Obamacare out at the roots. It's too deeply ingrained now, and that's the problem. No one's talking about repealing and replacing Obamacare, but we have to increase access to care, quality to care, and bring down the cost. The Democrats have demonstrated over and over the costs go through the roof when they're in charge. This was their health care plan, right?
Young people don't need Cadillac plans, Mr. Speaker. They don't need, A to Z.
That's right.
They're supporting the entire, this behemoth that's called Obamacare.
Yes.
It's unwieldy and it's dying of its own weight.
Speaker Johnson,
you and I can talk about that for 90 minutes. Yeah. Go ahead.
Speaker Johnson, I'm not a fan of playing politics, of shutting down the government like this, but there are situations where you're being accused of playing politics recently, too. There was a special election that was held for Arizona more than 3 weeks ago now. The Democratic congresswoman-elect won that special election, Grijalva. She's waiting to be seated, and now Arizona's attorney general is threatening to sue you for taxation without representation if you don't seat her. I realize Congress is not in session, but it's been more than 3 weeks, and all the representatives in the House are being paid right now. Why can't you seat her?
Well, not all the members of the House are being paid. I think all the Republicans.
Well, some of them have chosen not to take a paycheck. They are all under law allowed to receive a paycheck, but they are saying that this is a huge amount of politics. You're using this as leverage by not seating them, and Arizona is saying this is taxation without representation.
Yeah, I'm shocked that there's another Democrat politician from Arizona seeking publicity right now. Now the state AG is involved.
You haven't seated their full delegation.
She's going to sue me, I'm sure. No,
she's not going to sue you. The Attorney General of Arizona is going to sue you for their people not being able to be fully represented.
No, that's who I'm referring to. I know, and she wants publicity too, and it's all a farce. Let me tell you what's happening here. The Rep-elect Grijalva was elected after the House went out of session. So I have said this repeatedly. I'm delighted to administer the oath to her as soon as we get back to legislative session. The people who are preventing us from doing that, ironically, are the two Democrat senators from Arizona. If Gallegos and Kelly would vote to reopen the government, we'll get this thing done quickly. I'm following right now the Pelosi precedent. When my dear friend and colleague from Louisiana, Julia Letlow, in very similar circumstances, was elected to fill in a special election to fill the seat of her late husband who passed, died because of COVID. Nancy Pelosi took 25 days to administer the oath. Rep. Grijalva, won an election to take her father father's seat in Congress. It's an amazing thing, and we congratulate her for that. And I'm looking forward to administering the oath. But we have to get back to work. The lights have been turned out here. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have shut down the government, and the first order of business is to make sure that American people, federal employees, law enforcement agents, Border Patrol agents, TSA, air traffic control get their paychecks so we can keep the government functioning, and then we'll get to the ceremonial duty of administering the oath. In the meantime, she can be working for her constituents. She has hired staff. I've noticed they keep doing stunt videos outside of her office, knocking on the door and pretending it's closed. It shouldn't be. She should be in there taking calls from her constituents and doing her job.
Mr. Speaker, we heard Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, say every day that we're closed, it gets better for us. Obviously, not probably a very smart thing to say, but I think he's alluding to polling, and I don't expect polling to help. You've got a lot of media entities that, if Republicans shut down the government, you might have the coverage that we're seeing nationwide might be a little bit different. Okay, so we get that. It's always going to be that way. Always going to be that way. There's no way around it. Do you believe the polls, though? Do you believe that the Democrats have sold that bill of goods, that this is a Republican shutdown? And do you think it's going to hurt? Should Republicans be rightly concerned about the midterms because you're, I don't know, once again pushing grandma off the cliff in her wheelchair?
No, I'm very bullish about the midterms. I'm absolutely convinced that we're going to grow the House majority here and keep the Senate, of course, and we'll be able to give President Trump 4 years and not just 2. And part of the reason I'm confident about that is I know we're doing the right thing. This is the simple thing. This is the historic thing, by the way. We passed a totally clean stopgap funding measure, a clean CR. There's no Republican priorities or policy writers or anything on that at all. It's 24 pages in length, and every person in the country can see it for themselves. Now, do we have headwinds from the mainstream and legacy media who, parrot the, Chuck Schumer's talking points every day? Of course. But the American people are not stupid, and they understand what's going on here. And the polling that we're seeing is moving the needle rapidly in our direction because they know our message is simple because the truth is simple. And it's very easy for me to go out and debate anybody or do interviews. I'm constantly out on the airwaves trying to just relay the simple truth, and it sounds repetitive. But that's what it takes to saturate, the message, and people are getting it. And I know, and Chuck Schumer knows, that what he's doing is wrong. And you can roll the tape and play his own speeches. In fact, play the floor speech that he gave in March of this year on the identical scenario, where he said it would be morally wrong and outrageous and selfish to close the government down because it would hurt real Americans. Remember, as you said earlier, Joe, their counterproposal CR is a joke. It's not just healthcare. They want to add $1.5 trillion in new spending on a 7-week stopgap funding measure. They want to give healthcare paid for by U.S. taxpayers to illegal aliens. Yes, that is in the bill, page 57. Look at section 2141. They want to unwind we cut all the fraud, waste, and abuse in the One Big Beautiful Bill. They want to reverse all that. They want to give $500 million to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting again. I mean, all sorts of things. And they want to pull $50 billion from rural hospitals while they're claiming that they care about Americans' health care. It is a joke. They know it. They need to give it up and open the government.
Yeah, it should be made clear that obviously it's against federal law to cover illegals with Medicaid. But the way you can, for example, the way California does it, they do cover 1.4 million illegals using that loophole that allows them they game the system with those provider taxes to jack them up, to get a bigger reimbursement from the feds, which allows that money to go do all this other stuff, which allows state money to get freed up to cover illegal aliens from cradle to grave. It's not just young or old or anything else. So that's factual. You're saying it, but people hear you say that and they don't believe you because Hakeem Jeffries.
They need to go read it themselves.
But they can immediately point to that federal funds can. So they will stick to that. Federal funds are not being used, but federal funds go out there to California. You can use the federal funds for this and then take the money you were going to save from that to pay for the illegal aliens. And that's what's going on. We know. But you've got to look at it closely to figure that out. What's the end game?
Well,
at this point, how are you going to get? How are we going to? Once we get no kings out of the way, Chuck will feel okay about negotiating.
Let's pray that that's true. Just to put a bow on what you just said, we closed those loopholes in the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Right.
And Section 2141 of their counterproposal says they want to repeal that. Okay, so
right.
how does this end? I do think it has a lot to do with the Hate America rally that'll be on the mall on Saturday. You're going to have all the Antifa and BLM and pro-Hamas. Watch who assembles there. All the Marxists will be on the mall. They can't open the government, apparently, until that rally is over because they can't face the angry mob. So as soon as that's done...
As soon as that's over, you think that there is an impetus or a way to kind of break this by next week?
I think you've got at least, we just need 5 Democrats in the Senate to join and do the right thing with the majority of the Senate that's already there to reopen the government. And then we will have all these debates. And I can't wait to have all these debates with all these folks on all these issues. That's the way the system works. It's the way the process works. We were always going to do that. This is a game. They're trying to play a game because they had to draw a line in the sand to show a fight against President Trump and Republicans so they can protect their own careers. Chuck Schumer's worried he's going to get a challenge from a Marxist in New York. You might have noticed Marxism is all the rage in New York now. We're going to have probably a Marxist mayor, I think. Looks like he's going to win. Chuck Schumer thinks AOC, or one of Mamdami's disciples, is going to run against him and he's going to lose his Senate seat. He's been in Congress for 44 years. He came here when I was 9 years old in the 3rd grade. He doesn't want to go home and do anything else. And so that's what this is about. It is a selfish political game so that they can get cover. And I wish it weren't true, and it gives me no pleasure to tell you that, but everybody can see through this and they know exactly what's going on.
Speaker Johnson, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Okay.